Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick here for this week's Friday Morning GM with co-host Voss Larikos. Voss, how you doing?
Life is good, Ken. Coming off that statement win and heading into a nice two-game stretch to hopefully put some separation at the top of the AFC North.
Yeah, this would be an absolutely something to be thankful for if they were able to take care of both of these games against the Browns and then the Bengals over the next, 10 days or so. Exciting thing to look at. And this is some people will be listening to this on Friday when it comes out, so it's actually be only a week until we're completely done with it.
And then they have the mini bye, heading into the Chargers Sunday Night Football game,
and then the second mini bye.
Right. So things are getting opportunity to get healthy for sure.
So great, going into Los Angeles, then coming back with a bye after that as well, which is a great way to take your West Coast road trip with just that in the middle of a long period. You mentioned health. The injury report on the Ravens is the best of the year yesterday, by far. Also, we're used to seeing a lot of names on it, particularly since the first few games of the year where players are dropping consistently. Now, there are some people who are lost for the year already. We know that J.K. Dobbins is not coming back no matter what. And we've also not seen yet Tyus Bowser. But the only three people on the report yesterday were Odell Beckham. We get this right here. Morgan Moses returning.
Right. And
Michael Pierce, who had an illness, which is an unbelievably clean report.
Absolutely. For this time of year, unbelievably clean. Really just, it seems that Ronnie Stanley and Odafe Away and some of the other players that were nursing something seem to be pretty much at full health. And the big news is Morgan Moses returning to full practice after missing last week. Certainly could use his help against the Browns defensive front this week coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually McCary's worst game of the year was playing against Myles Garrett earlier this year. McCary coming off an unbelievable game this last week. The first A+ grade for any Raven this year. He only missed 2 blocks the entire game. Both of those not at the line of scrimmage. Obviously didn't have any negative events. Just a fantastic game from Patrick. Really the best game of his career, but absolutely outstanding. The first A+ of the year for the Ravens.
Yeah, very good. I saw your write-up and was very impressed by his overall scoring. You saw it on the field and you said, well, he didn't give up too much pressure, if at all, but to have you go play-by-play and get an A+, that's fantastic.
Yeah, really. There's often something. I'm always hesitant to comment on offensive line play before I've sat down and score it because it doesn't take a lot of failures to really add up to something significant. But he definitely had a fine game. One thing we've heard a little bit of on this week we'll talk about is Jason Pierre-Paul coming out and saying that he's still practicing.
Yes, he apparently reported to a report by Josina Anderson. He is interested in signing to a practice squad on a contender. And I personally would be interested in that for a low-cost move. In addition to Tyus Bowser, there's also, we don't know if David Ojabo is going to return this year. The tea leaves seem to be pointing in a direction that he is not. And I personally believe that whether injury arose or even as an upgrade over Tavius Robinson, who has one of the worst pass rushing grades in the league out of any edge defender, he could be a worthwhile addition for cheap.
There are some reasons to do it and some reasons that I can come up with. One really good reason to do it is that it would give you some early down coverage at outside linebacker, and it might also allow you to put him in the game on third down and kick him inside to try and get some pass rush, where they have been getting good pass rush already from Michael Pierce, but cut the snaps for Pierce and cut the overall snap burden on the defensive line, which has been an average of about 43.7% so far per lineman this year.
Yes, that's been a concern of mine with Pierce in particular, with his injury history and how well he's played. We've talked about the Ndamukong Suh, keeping tabs on him if they need it. But when you look at this team, there's a few things that could derail the season, knock on wood. One is certainly offensive tackle, but another could be losing somebody up front. So to have maybe a JPP or a Sue on speed dial if you need them, that's would behoove Eric DeCosta at this point of the season.
So we've talked a little bit about Sue over the last couple of weeks, and we talked about JPP too. What's your feeling on the player who is more likely to directly address the Ravens' need? Because I think it would be Sue from a lineman perspective, but the other question is from a readiness perspective.
Well, certainly JPP is familiar with the scheme after playing in it last year, so that would certainly speed up his learning curve as far as any new wrinkles that McDonald has incorporated. And then again, defensive tackle is kind of a plug-and-play position where there's not – I mean, there's some stunts and some shifting, but pretty much it's pretty similar from team to team as far as what they're asking the players to do. Either or for me, I'm just thinking, can you upgrade – would Sue be an upgrade over maybe some Brent Urban snaps? And would JPP be an upgrade over Tavius Robinson snaps?
Okay, fair enough. I don't even need either of those players to necessarily be replaced. I kind of like having the depth, particularly if either Sue or JPP were okay with the practice squad role.
Yes, and it's not something we're pounding the table for here, but worth bringing up on this show because that's really probably what Eric DeCosta is spending a lot of his time doing this time of year is lining up those contingency plans where he needs them. Yeah,
you have those two guys as contingency plans, and obviously, if you sign either of them to the practice squad, you can release, you can catch and release like fishing. But is there a different player? I mean, the Ravens are right at the top of contending teams. They are in everybody's sights as far as a team they would like to go to, including players who are currently on NFL rosters and may get released as super veterans, the way say Terrell Suggs did a few years ago, given his freedom to go find a team for the playoffs kind of thing. Or, there could be others as well, but there also could be some other big name that we're not thinking of yet that says, hey, I'm ready to go right now if you want me.
Sure.
Do the Ravens need to be careful about that at all? Or the fact that they're on the practice squad means, you can sign them and you can also let them go?
I'm okay with that personally. The rings chasers, so to speak, the guys that are on their last year or second to last year and they want to try to win a championship. I'm okay with that. I think that's, even was it Bobby Williams in 2012, the veteran guard that sort of was riding on Ray Lewis's coattails as a player that wanted to win a championship.
Eric Williams,
sort of thing.
Not Eric Williams. Who was the guy? The guy from the Bengals, Bobby Williams.
Bobby,
yeah.
I think it was Bobby. I don't think that necessarily – it seems like they have great chemistry this year. It really does. You see the players. You see Morgan Moses on Wired, getting in, hyping people up, and you see everybody excited for Beckham, and you see, it just seems like really good vibes going around this year. So I wouldn't be too concerned with the chemistry aspect of it. I think that's a way you can save money on the cap long term. We've seen the Chiefs and some other teams where they can sign a veteran to cheaper than what he's probably worth on the open market, and he wants to come to your team to try to win a Super Bowl. That probably came into play with Clowney and Van Noy as well during this year, and Darby probably for that matter. So maybe a hidden benefit of taking on that Odell Beckham expenditure is that it raised the profile of the Ravens in maybe some veteran ring chasers' eyes.
Yeah, I like the word. Ring chasers, but that's good. Let's go on to one other thing. Now, we heard this on the radio largely because I asked Rob Long about it, but it's also been on Twitter a lot, so it's not my original idea by any stretch of the matter. But people are concerned, of course, now with the success of the Ravens defense that McDonald is going to be lost as a head coaching candidate somewhere else. I don't think it's a certainty by any means, but it could happen. And, if we were handicapping it, we'd probably assign a reasonable percentage to it. That might be an interesting thing to try and do. Now, what do you think the chances are that he's a head coach somewhere next year?
I don't think they're as high as some in the flock are making it out to be. He's only 36 years old. Most teams prefer an offensive-minded. Most owners and GMs prefer an offensive-minded head coach or a managerial style like a Harbaugh who doesn't have expertise on one side. Because if you bring in a hotshot DC to be your head coach and then you hire an offensive coordinator and he gets your offense humming, he's gone. because there's offense. I mean, you have a few. You have Salah on the Jets, Eberflus with Chicago, and D'Amico Ryans with Houston. And then Brandon Staley's probably the one that kind of reminds me a lot of McDonald. Number one defense with the Rams. Got the head coaching job with the Chargers. Mixed results. Definitely mixed results there as far as his head coaching. But, kind of an inventive scheme. McDonald's a great play caller, but we don't know if he's a great manager and a leader, especially as a 36-year-old man. So long story short, or circling back, I would say maybe 60% chance that he would get a job. Yeah,
so that's high still. I mean, I was thinking 40 myself.
Okay.
And if you go around, I mean, there's been a lot of guys. I mean, there's been a lot of really talented coaches who, for whatever reason, don't pass the head coaching sniff test. And right at the top of that list is Eric Bieniemy, who there's every incentive to hire him with Rooney Rule considerations and whatnot. But there are there's not been a taker yet. And people are wondering why, but I don't think it's anything about how he coaches offense. I don't think it's anything about that, which means I got to come back to it's probably something about how people think he relates to players or is able to manage things or juggle priorities or whatever it might be.
It's a different skill set. I mean, being a coordinator is different than being head coach is much more high level, organizing practice, not designing schemes and calling plays. Just a quick aside, I was discussing with somebody, Dev, actually, how strong the Ravens assistant coaches staff is this year. Made a comparison to the 2000 Ravens defensive coaching staff, which had defensive coordinator Marvin Lewis, defensive line coach Rex Ryan, linebackers coach Jack Del Rio, defensive assistant Mike Smith, all became head coaches. Donnie Henderson was the DB's coach. He's the only one who didn't, but he was a long-time coordinator after that. So anyway, but those were all a little bit older. They've been around the league, just sort of that. It's a different personality style, I think, really.
Right. That was an unbelievable set of coaches. And they really talked about it when Marvin Lewis left, that they had a succession plan in place. And Jack Del Rio never got his chance with this team. That Mike Nolan actually came in and was the defensive coordinator. And I'm not even sure if Mike Nolan might have been around in not in 2000, maybe in 01.
I think 01, or he may have been an assistant. I looked at it yesterday, but I don't have it in front of me now.
So, but anyway, then Del Rio never really got his chance, which was kind of a strange thing. He got the Jacksonville gig before he got his chance in Baltimore. But anyway,
they
Rex
were
Ryan
pretty successful. Rex was successful. Marvin, Mike Smith in Atlanta had a good run down there too. So anyway.
All right. So the other thing that's been suggested. So we've gone a little bit back and forth on the McDonald thing, and we think there is a risk clearly between the two of us that he'll be a head coach next year. On the other side, are the folks on Twitter who want to basically get rid of Harbaugh, and I think that's a lot of what you see on Twitter is people who really want to get rid of Harbaugh and they don't have a good reason. But they say we'll lose McDonald otherwise. Oh my God, kind of thing. And they say we have to do that to get rid of him. First of all, I'm not at all a fan of getting rid of Harbaugh without really, a really good casus belli here on this. He's a great long-term head coach. He's probably headed for the Hall of Fame at this point. He certainly is not far from it. And he's a guy who I doubt if you asked him today, he could make any declarative statement about when he intended to retire. Even I doubt he really could even gauge his own feelings about that. Unless there's some unknown health issue or whatever. I mean, 5 years from now, do you think Harbaugh knows right now whether he'd want to retire then?
Probably not. I mean, he's still prime age to be an NFL head coach, and a lot of these guys they want their name in the record book with most wins or most years tenured and. He comes from a football family, obviously, so I don't think he's looking to get out of it. I would personally put the over-under on Harbaugh at 3 years.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and a brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First two legs of your parlay hit, cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at an even bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boost, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie.
From now, because I think there's a chance he goes out on top, and there's another chance that the Ravens don't quite get over the hump, and Bisciotti says, hey, you've been our head coach for almost 20 years now, and it's time to turn it over. I will say in the last few years, I question sometimes his ability to resonate with the players as he gets a little bit older and the players become a little bit younger and a little bit more me-focused, self-centric. We've seen that with the trade requests. There's been quite a few trade requests, but that was not something that went on very often early on in his tenure, when it seemed like maybe he could have been a little bit more relatable, but that's all speculation.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and that's certainly something that you could point to. And some of the things about Eric Bieniemy that I say about what might be wrong, I'm just guessing. I have no idea what the reason is. The record speaks for itself. He was not hired as a head coach, or at least not yet. So something in that interview process, because the pressure is very high for the NFL to find him a job, for individual owners who talk to him to give him a job. If you bring him in and you bring in two other guys and you hire, anyone else besides Eric Bieniemy, who's been waiting for a while now, it's obviously something that you have to start answering questions about. But there must be something. It's kind of like, the beautiful girl you see who can't seem to ever get it in a stable relationship. There's something wrong.
All looks, no personality.
Yeah.
I think Bieniemy, I've seen his press conferences have been a little bit off the wall sometimes, and maybe that's not the image, but not because of his race or anything like that, just the way he gives a press conference. But, I don't know. I don't think – well, I don't want to go down that road. But,
right.
Yeah, if he deserves a shot, I'm pretty much at this point, I feel like the NFL owners want to win more than anything else. So that's their number one priority. And if he was the guy that they thought gave him the best chance, he would have got an opportunity, and maybe he will in the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, terrific. We don't need to go there any further. So the other component with McDonald is it worth, or is it even possible to create some sort of succession plan where you give him a promotion and a series of raises in a new contract extension that would get him up to, say, head coaching money over the course of, say, 5 years? And then it wouldn't even have to come with specific promises. It would be something of the nature of you're really overpaying for the coordinator position relative to the rest of the NFL in order to make sure you have this guy for an extended period. And it could even come with a period of moratorium period on any outside interviews. Probably not the entire 5 years, but maybe the first 2 years, no interviews.
So this concept of head coach in waiting essentially is what we're talking about. That was pretty popular in college football in 2008, 2009, 2010. Florida State pulled it off successfully, going from Bobby Bowden to Jimbo Fisher, won a national championship. That's fallen by the wayside now. It was really used as a recruiting tactic to tell the recruits, your older head coach is going to, you have somebody capable here when this guy retires. Interestingly, the Ravens did it with their general manager position, which is very interesting point there. We don't know what kind of deal was struck with DaCosta. I know he did interview at some point, right, Ken? And then
with the Packers,
right, and which is a franchise you would think, one of those sterling franchises he would consider. As far as the money, and certainly that would be the way. You pay him more, and you give him a little bit more control, and you give him a definitive timeline. That's how I understand that they did with DaCosta and Ozzie. It's a definitive timeline, and maybe you start getting a little more responsibility. Average coordinator pay is about $1 million. Harbaugh is, I believe, he's in the top 10 of head coaches at $12 million per year. Stefanski is the cheapest head coach at $3.5 million a year. So I think if you could come somewhere between that $1 million and $3.5 million with a definitive timeline and maybe some more control over perhaps the other assistant coaches or maybe even some influence on personnel, that might be enticing enough for McDonald. And he's still a young guy. I think he probably knows if he looks in the mirror, he might need a little bit more seasoning until he's ready too.
Yeah, great opportunity, obviously, to make some additional money in the meantime, but that might get it done. I wouldn't have trouble. So obviously, I'm not spending either "quote unquote" my cap dollars or Bisciotti's actual dollars out of his wallet to go as high as $4 or even $5 million at the end of a 5-year deal. I don't know exactly where DaCosta's salary fit in on the, assistant general manager to Ozzie level of pay. Ozzie I doubt he was making a lot of money. I don't even think I don't know what when he changed Ozzie into being a scout. Bisciotti had some comments about Ozzie will be around, he'll be the highest paid scout or whatever. It's something they probably cut his salary at some point to be commensurate. But the fact that was so seamless is really a wonderful thing about the Ravens organization. It says great things to other people who would come in and work here.
Absolutely. And this is an opportunity where Bisciotti, as you said, can, just the same as the practice facility or some of the other, add-ons, the extras that he can give to the franchise that don't impact the salary cap. If there's a way to make it happen, I think it's a good idea. The other guy is Anthony Weaver too. I mean, I think he
absolutely
might not be the tactician that McDonald is, but he has the leadership and the personality and the just the managerial skills maybe to be a head coach before McDonald.
Yeah, I first of all, I 100% agree, and I think it's more obvious even at the podium how much of an obvious head coaching candidate that Weaver is. He's an extremely good orator. His demeanor with the players is fantastic, extremely relatable. It just seems all kinds of natural for him to get a job there somehow. I want to go back to Harbaugh, though, for a moment, and how Harbaugh's position might be compromised within a scheme where there is a head coach in waiting. And I think this is the most valid point of why it wouldn't work is you immediately shift Harbaugh into a lame duck status. It's kind of like being elected for your second term as president. You have 4 years, but now your vice president is already campaigning to replace you. And, if you've seen the show Veep, it's almost funny how they keep them in another building and they never call them. And it's part of the whole joke that they're not involved in anything. But it really is. It's potentially a problem when your coordinator is the guy, and then you have a troublesome player who doesn't want to hear it from one parent and he wants to take it to the other.
Exactly. I guess they could keep it under wraps potentially, like they did with DaCosta and Ozzie, and that would be a way to circumvent that. But definitely, I agree with you. That would be a potential issue. The head coach needs to have, omnipotent power almost, so to enforce their imprint on the team. So, as you said, mommy says no, so I'm going to ask daddy, sort of thing could be a problem.
Yeah. That would be the way. I do think if there's an organization that can do it and make people understand, I think it's the Ravens. But then I think back to the transition from Billick to and having Rex Ryan around, who was expected to be the head coach next, and then Harbaugh in 2008. Ray Lewis made the very unfortunate statement that Rex Ryan was really the head coach that year. Well, first of all, you have a Hall of Fame head coach coming in who's proved that he was, a worthy leader in the years since. Frustrating that would, that kind of comment will be made, but that probably is going to color how you go through dealing with this kind of a change of management and deciding if you want to announce how you're switching riders in advance.
Yeah, there was a lot of tension between Rex and John in the early years, and I think that's why Rex moved on when he did. Mm-hmm. I was in favor of Rex at the time. I remember because anyway. But I don't know. I just don't think it's time to start considering that right now. Todd Monken could potentially be a successor, and as I said, Weaver. There's quite a few options. I don't think you need to worry too much about losing a coordinator unless that's going to impact, your scheme to an extent where paying Roquan turns into a negative or something like that.
Right. I'll say this. I think the chance of Monken being the next head coach is extremely low. Age alone says you don't do that kind of thing. That you want to come in and bring in a younger guy like Harbaugh, probably a little bit before 50, 45, maybe ideal. 39 could be better. It might not work out either. And obviously, some of the guys who got in real early, like Josh McDaniel, it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. But anyway,
he didn't work out either time for McDaniel.
Yeah. And there's been others that it hasn't worked for as well, obviously. But I think you can really hit pay dirt when you get a Tomlin age guy or a Harbaugh age guy, and you have them for a long time, and they define your franchise in a positive way. And you look at how many of the Ravens records are really now defined since the beginning of the Harbaugh era. There's two major breakpoints. They almost never go back to 1996 on records at all, unless they have to do it because Eric Turner had 5 straight interceptions that year or something. It's almost always since 2000, the Ravens record in night games is blah, 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 or since 2008 when John Harbaugh arrived, their record in night games is, whatever it is. I don't see them. I don't see them hiring an older coach again. I think they've had too much success now hiring a guy. And they obviously, Marchibroda was not Bisciotti's guy. And Bisciotti is going to have a management strategy that's I think, more akin to we want to make sure we have a stabilizing force in the organization for a period. And we can live with coordinators leaving. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think it's notable that the Ravens sort of gave McDonald a job interning at Michigan as a defensive coordinator for Jim for that 1 year and then brought him back. So for all we know, maybe there already is a succession plan in place that Bisciotti has already earmarked, and it is under wraps. At this point, I trust Bisciotti to make the right decision in this regard. That was his how he made his business, and he's brought that to the NFL franchise seamlessly, perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, it is important to note this is a Bisciotti decision. He's not in the Eric DeCosta hiring tree, so it's not a DeCosta decision to make. So you have the president, EDC, the president, the general manager, the head coach, and there's one other that all report to the who am I missing?
Dick Cass.
No, that's the president. So Sashi Brown, Dick Cass. It's general manager, head coach. They're the two you always see. They're the face, and the president. Maybe I'm thinking of Bisciotti being the fourth guy at these meetings, but I think there's a fourth guy who reports directly to the president. I'm trying to remember who that is, but
probably Kevin Byrne, the PR. Well, there's a couple different heads, but yeah, that's a good point. The organizational flowchart of the Ravens is not owner, GM, going vertically. Owner, GM underneath, head coach underneath. The head coach and the GM are in tandem. They're on the same horizontal line.
Yeah. There are out there. There are both means out there. It's usually actually fairly unusual to have the head coach reporting to the GM, but you can have a strong head coach situation where they have the final say on draft picks and other things. That occurred with Gruden, for example, and Mayock and whatnot.
Belichick. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, great stuff, Voss, as always. Tell folks where they can find your stuff online and talk football with you.
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Vasilis Beatdown, Vasilis Beatdown. I am the author and co-managing editor of Baltimore Beatdown blog, and I have another podcast where you can live stream YouTube. On Twitter, it is at Ravensway Pod.
All right. Outstanding. Other folks out there who want to be on a film study short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. I've got lots of great ideas. They're coming in at more than one per week right now, so I have a hard time keeping up. If I have offered you this kind of thing before, we've talked about doing a pod and I've forgotten somehow, please nudge me and we'll get right back on that. Because there's definitely been a few cases where I haven't kept up with it, or we had planned to have a meeting and something fell through and we didn't reschedule. That's all on me, but please nudge me to get me going again. And I'll be happy to hear from you. For Vas Larikos, this is Ken McCusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next time on Friday Morning GM.